All right. I think the recording has started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another AEA RTD Research Technology and Development TIG webinar. We're very excited today to be hosting two experienced evaluators working in the government who want to talk to us about the skills needed to develop evaluation capabilities. Before we start with that, though, I just wanted to let you know that this is another webinar in a series of webinars that the RTD TIG has been working on this year, and we've been, not to brag too much, but I think pretty successful in getting some great presentations, and we will continue to do that. I think given the pandemic situation, there's a lot happening virtually, and we've been able to participate, so that's great. Thanks everyone for joining today. I also wanted to just let folks know that the TIG has an upcoming week in just a little over a week to the contributions to the AEA 365 blog. Check it out. The information there is submitted by your fellow RTD TIG members, and it's very useful, practical information. They're short blogs, so they won't take too long to read, and obviously useful information. We're always looking for volunteers to help participate in TIG activities, so feel free to reach out to me or any of the leaders that are listed here. Robin Wagner from CDC, Alex from Ripple Effect, Gavin from Research Fish, Dee Dee's over at NIH, Lex is at Ripple Effect, and Gretchen and Brian, who you may know as well. So thanks again for joining. And let me just pause for a brief second to admit a few more folks. And Amanda and Sue, let me just turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. We are delighted to be here today. Amanda and I have had so much fun preparing this talk, and for us to have this opportunity to just think about our practice and to talk with you about our practice is a great pleasure for us. We have a lot of information to give you, and we're not going to be able to get through all of our slides. We will make the slides available to you. Josh will tell us later whether they'll be posted on a website or how you access them, so we'll come back to that. I do want you to note the very last slide, slide 32, is a list of interesting readings. There's some historical things on there and then some more modern things that would be helpful to you, I think. And there's also a great document that this TIG developed. I had nothing to do with it, but if you're doing any evaluation of federally funded research, you will find the RTDIG document to be extremely helpful to you, so don't miss that one. And there's also a newly revised standard evaluation textbook that you should have as a resource. So welcome. Again, we're thrilled to be here with you and to have a chance as practitioners of evaluation to just think and talk about our field today. We're going to tag team it, and so I'll start off and then we'll switch back and forth between Amanda and me. Next slide, please. So what are we going to talk about today? Here's an overview of our presentation on this slide. We want to talk about the link between qualifications and competencies. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page about defining evaluation. We want to know what competencies and skills are needed. A lot of different people are demanding lots of different things from us, so we want to consolidate that. We want to talk about how you can get those skills. And then we want to go beyond just a toolbox to think about, well, what does it really mean to be able to think about evaluation and to practice as an evaluative thinker? Next slide, please. Amanda?
Okay, so now you're probably wondering, why are we showing our qualifications? And it's really because we want to talk about the evaluation competencies and skills. And Sue and I thought that we would show you our own qualifications and competencies. And this may get you started thinking about these for other evaluators, for evaluation teams, and possibly for yourself. So I'm going to start. As you can see from my profile, my formal education was based in clinical care, epidemiology, and research. And while working on my doctorate, I was introduced to program evaluation and evaluative methods, and these just captured my imagination. So although it may seem like I've shifted disciplines, my career has been a continuing thread that links my education, employment, teaching, and evaluation experience. Now, how is this related to evaluation competencies and skills? Well, a lot of this is through my experience, through ongoing self-education, through getting a certificate in evaluation, and so on. And finally, one thing, and we'll talk about this later, is location or the context of whatever evaluation is. So if we were evaluating, this was a program today, my location is 5 miles south of DC in a very, very rural area of Virginia. And so that's the context from which, the location context from which I operate. Sue, I'm turning over to you.
Thank you. I won't read off everything, but I did want you to just take some information away from looking at this slide. One thing is that Amanda and I have over 60 years of experience together as evaluators. These have been fulfilling careers for us. We've stayed in the field for a long time. We've also been devoted to lifelong learning. So evaluation is not a static field, it's a dynamic field and still a young discipline. Things are changing, and so you'll find as the years go on that you need new skills, and you'll be happy to get them. And then I also want you just to think about this, that you don't actually have to retire if you're an evaluator. Amanda tried to retire and it didn't take. And so I don't have any plans to retire. I'm still working, but we'll see one of the greatest minds in evaluation, Michael Scriven, is still working. We're going to talk a lot about him today, and he's 92 years old. So you don't have to be thinking about that. Anyway, these are the kinds of skills that will get you a GS 14 or 15 classification, the kinds of skills that Amanda and I have. Next slide, please. So I had said that we want to, first of all, make sure that we all know what we're talking about when we say evaluation. And this definition doesn't just go to program evaluation, but all kinds of evaluation. Let's go to the next slide and just look at synthesizing some of these definitions. Now, the definitions that we looked through to do this talk included some from the OMB. We're going to go through that in more detail later, some of the skills. From AEA, I have an operational definition that I developed that I use all the time. Of course, Michael Scriven started us all out with defining evaluation. From the Joint Committee on Standards and Educational Evaluation, we have a definition, and then there are lots of other places. But if you put all of them together, they have some commonalities. And the very first one is the most important. That is, an evaluation examines the merit, worth, or significance of a program, a product, a proposal, something else. This is the heart of evaluation. In the absence of an evaluative judgment, evaluation hasn't been conducted. Something very useful might have been conducted, but it's not what we mean by evaluation. So what we're all trying to do is learn how can we make evaluative judgments that are credible, reliable, and useful to people. So that's the very heart of evaluation. Then there are some other things that I want to just bring to your attention. Of course, it includes systematic data collection analysis, which means you have to have a lot of analytic skills. It might involve programs, projects, interventions, policies, organizations. As we'll see at the end, now we're even thinking about how to evaluate principals. Michael Quinn Patton is leading the field in coming to be a principled evaluator, but also being able to evaluate the principles of an organization or an innovation. Evaluation, of course, we know has to be tailored to the stage of a program, so we have to have skills in program planning, implementation, process, and impact. We assess effectiveness and efficiency. We have to be able to use quantitative and qualitative methods. We want to produce results that are useful, and we want to inform decisions. So this is what we're going to mean today when we're talking about evaluation. We mean these things. Next slide, please. And then we have to go beyond, as I said earlier, just the toolbox. And here's one of our great leaders, Michael Scriven. I always attend his talks at AEA, but he's very old now. He's 92, and he's not very healthy. If you ever get a chance to see one of his videos from Claremont College, do that. You won't be sad about it. But this is what he says. It's not just having skills, but as a particular kind of discipline, you have to be able to do all these things. Consider costs, comparisons, needs and ethics, political, psychological, legal, and presentational dimensions, the design of outcome studies, sources of bias, reactive effects, and techniques for supporting and integrating value judgments. So clearly, Dr. Scriven believes that evaluation skills go way beyond being able to make a simple survey or run a t-test. And so we're going to try to figure out today what we need to be able to do. Amanda, next slide, please.
We wanted to be sure we were, again, on the same page about what are competencies. And competencies really incorporate skills, knowledge, and behaviors. Next slide. So skills, evaluation is basically a context-dependent activity, and evaluators practice evaluation in many different places and ways. So I want you to stop and think a minute about what skills are needed for program evaluation of research, technology, and development programs or projects or policies in your location. I think you may be considering both hard skills and soft skills, such as evaluation design, analytic skills, such as intermediate level statistics or higher level statistics even, qualitative analysis, computer skills, abilities to do logic models, case studies, and many, many more. But some of the other things are the softer skills, being a good listener, being a good communicator, being able to write fluently, knowing how to plan, implement, and manage an evaluation, and also how to budget for an evaluation, budgeting money, time, personnel, and negotiation skills. Next slide, please. Next slide. So another part of competencies is knowledge. And a lot of times we consider this areas of specialty or expertise. I generally think of knowledge as related to methods, valuing, and use. And methods are some of the method issues related to the methodologies being used. Valuing is the manner in which data that we collected and report on is judged or valued. And use, you can think of Michael Quinn Patton has written frequently about utilization-focused evaluation. Next slide, please. And the third component of competencies is the behavior or the characteristics which the individual evaluator displays. And I want you to consider what types of behavior you expect from an evaluator. In addition to these examples on the slide, what else? When I think of behaviors, I think about professional practice. And what does that mean? It means that stakeholders are responding to the needs and concerns of the people who have charged to have the evaluation done. It means assessing evaluation context and identifying program logic, managing the resources and skills prudently so that the results that are needed can be achieved. Gathering, using, and interpreting evidence with care and judgment, and reporting fairly and encouraging effective use of evaluation findings. And then there's those interpersonal skills. We touched on those before, but they also include valuing your evaluation team and valuing the stakeholders that are involved in a program. Also using sound negotiating skills and conflict resolution skills, and demonstrating gender awareness and cultural sensitivity. And I cannot leave this without saying, upholding ethical standards. A lot of us tend to just say, oh, I know all about ethics. I don't need to think about that too much. But you really do. You need to display self-awareness and pursue continuous professional development. Next slide. So why should you even care about evaluator competencies? Well, it's a way to make clear to everyone the important characteristics of professional evaluation practice. And it also challenges us to create pathways for engaging all types of people in becoming evaluators. Evaluator competencies are an inclusive approach that may help provide multiple clear pathways for entry into practice. Next slide, please. Oh, someone here also mentioned being aware of unconscious bias in the chat box, and I agree with that completely. So what I want to do now is really talk pretty fast about the 2018 AEA Evaluator Competency Domains. And it's really about, these domains are really made up of what we were talking about before, skills, knowledge, and behaviors. AEA has put these competencies into 5 domains. If you haven't read through them, I highly recommend it. There's a link to those, directly to those competencies. It's a really quick read, and I think it's worth your time. Next slide. So I'm going to briefly, as we go through these different competency domains, and I want you to think about how they relate to skills, knowledge, and behaviors. So the first one is around the arena of professional practice, and it's really looking at ethics, evaluation foundations, evaluation approaches and theories, the systematic use of evidence and judgments, and much more. Next slide, please. The methodology domain focuses on technical aspects of evidence-based systematic inquiry for valued purposes. So consider some of the skills we discussed earlier. Other things that you may want to consider is, what is the purpose of the evaluation and what is the need for this evaluation? What are the questions to be asked? And that puts a boundary around your evaluation. What constitutes credible and feasible evaluation findings? Next slide, please. The third domain is related to context. And I told you earlier, context involves a variety of different factors. Some evaluators think that the context of a program, policy, project, whatever, should drive the evaluation, or at least be a primary consideration when evaluating a program. So as I said earlier, I use the example of location as one of the contextual factors that you need to consider. So if you were evaluating my independent practice, which actually is several people are involved in all of the evaluations I do, one of the things you would consider is, where is the location of the evaluation, of the office, of the organization, whatever. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the key stakeholders? and who benefits or may have not benefit from an evaluation. And it goes on into economics, politics. We have both internal organizational politics, and we also have external, larger base politics. And there are many other factors, and all of these need to be considered. Next slide, please. The fourth domain is the planning and management domain, which really involves those behaviors and skills we were talking about earlier. And I tend to think of it as frequently including the business end of evaluation, plus other areas such as networking, developing proposals, contracting, determining work assignments, and so on. Next slide, please. And then the final domain is the interpersonal domain, which really routinely shows up as evaluators, as behaviors that evaluators demonstrate. And I cannot emphasize enough active listening. And active listening is part of communication, but it's also part of cultural competence and cultural sensitivity. It's part of facilitation and conflict resolution. Next slide, please. So at this point, Sue's gonna walk us down some more thoughts here.
Thank you. We thought we would be remiss if we didn't bring to your attention, now that we're all living through the Evidence-Based Policymaking Act of 2018, if we didn't bring to your attention the specific skills that are included in this memorandum, which if you haven't read, and you probably have, but you should read, it's easy enough to get to. You can just Google it and you can get it. But in this memorandum, this is what it says the specific skills in evaluation design, data collection, and data analysis should be. Theory of change and logic model, being able to do evaluability or evaluation feasibility, the selection of evaluation methods, measurement, statistical analysis and mathematical modeling, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods, interviews and focus groups, survey design, sampling methods, power analysis. This is a big, long list, but this is what the government is expecting of us. Next slide, expecting of us. Let's go to the next slide, please. If we go back to Michael Scriven, now it's not like we don't have enough skills that we're supposed to be developing in all these different areas. Here's some more things he thinks we should be able to do. We should be able to do content expertise and experience with similar projects. We should have that, but then we should have practical logical analysis, including identifying hidden agendas or unnoticed assumptions about a program, product, proposal, identifying mismatches between a goal and a need, identifying loopholes in an evaluation design, and providing accurate, concise summaries. So our list is growing longer and longer, but don't be discouraged because now we're going to get to the good part. How are we going to get these skills and competencies? Let's go back to Amanda on the next slide.
So this is like preaching to the choir. That means most of you already know where to learn about these competencies and skills. And that said, you have an opportunity to guide other evaluations to this information. So back to the title of our program and that little music blurb we had at the beginning, it's really where do you get what you want and what you need? And most of these are traditional things we think of: training, coaching, mentoring, feedback on the job, learning, getting degrees, advanced degrees in evaluation or related fields, having direct experience conducting evaluations or participating with a team on evaluations is very helpful. Next slide. So what are we talking about with professional development? Again, we have wonderful resources available. We've got all of the resources through AEA, but we also have the Evaluators Institute, more and more colleges and universities are getting in on teaching and providing professional development in program evaluation. And a formal degree may be a master's or a doctorate, but many of these universities and colleges are also offering certificates. There are also fellowships and internships, multiple online programs. But I really encourage you, think out of the box for your professional development and for those of your colleagues. For instance, I recently read this blog on co-design that was in another arena than, quote, program evaluation. And it really made me stop and think about some of the things I do when evaluating a program and working with teams. Next slide, please. So this slide is a commercial for FAES, which is the Foundation for Advanced Education in the Sciences. And we're sharing this because Sue and I are either teaching or co-teaching these classes that you see listed on this slide. And the second thing is these classes are open to the public. This is just an example of the many different ways that education, continuing development can occur. Next slide, please. Sue?
Yeah, this is mine. But actually, Josh, would you go back to the prior slide? I want to just say a word about this. So before Amanda was ever asked to develop the first evaluation course at FAES, there were no courses in evaluation at FAES. So without Amanda, this would still be a blank screen. But these are the ones, I guess it's been 10 or 11 years since she started 518. These are the ones we've added over the years because these are the skills that we have seen that are lacking in people at NIH and in the federal government who are asked to do evaluation. So we have tried really to address skills that people need. These are highly applied courses, but they are developed because we found that people needed these to be able to do evaluation. Thank you. Next slide. I want to say a few words about.
I just want to add that back to those resources, there are other great resources within the government. I do a shout out to CDC. They have a lot of online information, and some of the other agencies within the government also have lots of opportunities to continue developing your knowledge and skill with evaluation. Okay, go ahead, Sue.
Okay, thanks. You're right. Okay, I want to say a few more words on the next slide about on-the-job training. There are many evaluators who don't have very much formal training. I remember one year I was giving a talk at AEA, and the discussant for my talk was Daniel Stufflebeam. Some of the old timers will recognize his name, one of the grand old gentlemen and great thinkers who helped establish evaluation. And in my remarks, I happened to say that I didn't get my first formal class in evaluation until 10 or 15 years after I'd started working as an evaluator. And in his remarks, he said he never had a formal class in evaluation. But of course, there were no formal classes when he started. So there's lots of ways that you can learn about evaluation on the job, but you have to be kind of humble about this and start out in a learning mode. So there are technical review panels for contracted evaluation. I try to get on these all the time. First of all, most of these panels need experienced evaluators, but it's also a great chance for me to see what's going on in the field and what kind of proposals are being submitted by evaluation contractors. So if you have some pretty good skills, this is a great way to improve your skills, and it doesn't cost you anything, and people are usually very grateful, and it's really interesting. An easier thing is sometimes to be on an evaluation working group, a task force, an advisory committee. Unless you have a lot of skills, you don't want to come in and say too much at the beginning, but this is a great way to improve your skills and to learn something in a content area as well. And then, of course, participation on an evaluation team. I know when Amanda first started teaching the Intro to Evaluation class, students would come to us, and our students are very smart people with advanced degrees, usually in the basic sciences, and they've been asked to do an evaluation and they don't know anything about evaluation. So they take Amanda's course and then they come to her and they say, oh, well, now can I lead an evaluation? And she says, no. Now you can be a junior member of an evaluation team. And that's how you should think about it. You should, if you're a novice, you should start off with on-the-job training by joining a task force or a work group or something else as a junior member. So you would spend a lot of time listening at the beginning, but this is a great way to get started in evaluation. Next slide, please. All right, how does evaluative thinking relate to evaluator competencies and skills? Michael Quinn Patton, who's another one of the evaluation's founders and great thinkers, is developing an idea about going beyond performance metrics, going beyond project and program evaluation. He thinks that we've established in our field now, in our discipline, we've established that we know how to do strategic planning. He believes we know that we've established how to do performance metrics, how to do SMART goals, how to do a lot of things. And now we need to go beyond that. And that the next thing that we're going to be working on in evaluation is to deepen our theory, knowledge, skill, and practice by evaluating principles, particularly principles-driven programs and change initiatives. And if that's not what we're asked to do in the federal government, we're not asked to do anything. So I think this is very exciting. Let's go to the next slide and see what he says specifically about principles of evaluative thinking. Okay, so now we have a toolbox. We're going to assume you're going to take some classes, you're going to do some self-study, you're going to get professional development, you're going to volunteer to be on some work groups. That's just a toolbox. That doesn't make you a good evaluator. Here are all the other things you have to be able to do according to Michael Scriven if you want to be a principled evaluation. And you would want to evaluate these also in an organization if you're evaluating innovation. I'm not going to go through them all, but be clear, be intentional, be accountable, be specific, focus and prioritize, be systematic, make assumptions explicit, operationalize program concepts, ideas, and goals, distinguish inputs and processes from outcomes. And it goes on. So you can pull this article just by Googling it and from New Directions for Evaluation. But this is probably where the field is going. Michael Quinn Patton is very influential, and he's certainly a joy to read. So I hope that you'll take a look at this. Now, how do we think we can ever do all of these things that we're looking at? Even though there are ways to get these skills, how are we going to make this happen? Amanda, next slide.
So you're saying, oh my gosh, how can one person do all of this? And the key here is that evaluation is truly a team sport. Think about it like this women's basketball team. You have some women who can dunk that ball right in the hoop and they are so good, where others may be very good at defense. So not everybody on a team may have all of the same skills. However, with a team, the idea is you can bring all of those skills that are needed for a particular evaluation in a particular setting, in a particular context. You can organize all of those skills because every person is not good at everything and every person doesn't know everything. And I just love this quote from Michael Scriven. Teams, when properly employed, are immensely better than soloists. Not only are 2 heads better than 1, but 6 heads, if carefully chosen and appropriately instructed, are almost always better than 5. Next slide, please. So if you don't know George Grob, he has been involved with AEA and in evaluation for many, many years. He's now retired, but I guess it was over 20 years ago, with some other evaluators, came up with this list of 7 habits of highly effective evaluators. And I just think this is so applicable. And those really things of those effective evaluators who show show competencies in evaluation include being open to new ideas, being humble, getting to the point, which I always have to work at, having very good communication skills, which includes that listening, using plain language, because you may be talking to people across a lot of different arenas, being timely, being very practical, and above all, facing the truth. Next slide. So we have just a few minutes more before we open up for questions, but we really wanted to share, Sue and I wanted to share what we've learned from working with and teaching evaluators. And what I found is some people enter evaluation with little or no training, but then seek out this knowledge. They then quickly grasp the effective and efficient way to plan, conduct, and report findings and support use of findings for an evaluation. Then there's the flip side of the coin. There are people who think they can evaluate a program because they have a degree, such as a master's or a PhD, in something not related to evaluation. Or they may be in a specific position, such as they're director of an office, but they don't have the understanding of the basics of evaluation, such as evaluation approach based on context and engaging and working with stakeholders. From my experience, many very smart researchers, especially those from STEM disciplines, know little about some of the basic social science methods that are used with program evaluation, but I found they can learn. Sue?
Thank you, Amanda. I just wanted to say a few words too. We do get in our classes a lot of really smart people with advanced degrees who are suddenly asked to do an evaluation. And that's kind of a flaw in the thinking where we have worked, which is that any smart person can come in unprepared and do an evaluation. And that's one reason we wanted to do this webinar today, to let you know that even if you don't have much experience, if you're asked to do an evaluation, there are ways you can prepare to do that. And so one thing is, Amanda and I over the years, and many of the others of you on the phone, and especially in this TIG, have given hours of free consultation and coaching to people who have been given an evaluation assignment but don't know what to do. There are plenty of people around who will get you started. Don't forget that we have lots of we have several outstanding journals in evaluation. And so you always want to do a literature search. You have the Federal Evaluators Group. And so I always encourage people to go to the blog and say what you've been asked to do and ask if anybody's done something similar, or they know of something similar, or they have some tools that they might be able to share with you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but evaluation, as Amanda said, is a team sport. Even if you're the sole evaluator on a project, the only person being paid, there are lots of people around who can support you and help you and coach you so that you can do a really good evaluation, even though you haven't had much experience. And then the other thing that I've really learned over the years is that you really need a professional identity. If you're supposed to do evaluation in any long-term function, you should join the American Evaluation Association, or you should go to some association. There are policy associations, there are others, there are economics associations if that's your degree. You should belong to these. The American Evaluation Association is particularly good for professional development because of its affiliation with the Evaluators Institute, because of its workshops, but also because it's a very nurturing environment. If you submit a paper to present there, it'll probably be accepted. It'll be accepted in a warm, enthusiastic, and responsive way, even if you only have 10 people in your audience. And it will be a great, warm, nurturing environment where you can develop your skills in a safe place. So I encourage you, now who knows, we're not going to be able to attend conferences in person for a while, but the day will come when we can do it again. So always think about developing that professional identity as you're working on developing your evaluation skills. And I think that brings us to the Q&A. Can someone, there's a question in the chat about the Federal Evaluators blog. I don't do that anymore because I just don't, but can Josh or someone put that web address up?
Sue, it's also, any of you can go to the AEA website, and they list a link to the federal evaluators listserv where you can sign up for it.
I'll look for it and provide it as a resource afterwards.
Thank you.
Great.
Josh,
so this is really, well, I was just going to say, this is our contact information. If you have any questions about or comments about anything we've said today, we're going to go on and show the next slide, please. Next slide. And while we're doing that, that's just the reading, and this will be in the slide handout that gets posted on the website. So at this point, we still have a little bit of time here for questions and also for any comments about anything we've said, because we're very interested in hearing from you.
Amanda,
so Josh, I don't know.
Let me respond to one of the chat questions. Someone just asked about the principles focused evaluation. On this slide, you see the reference. This is a book that Michael Quinn Patton has written. I'm sure he's also presenting a workshop at AEA, which will be online this year. And he's probably at the Evaluators Institute, which I also believe is online. So if you're interested in principles-focused evaluation, I would first of all get his book. And there's also embedded in our slides is a reference to the New Directions Journal, where he had an article. So you can do some self-study. And then I think that he will be presenting on this in numerous places over the years. So that will be a good place to get started. Thank you. Back to you, Josh.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sue and Amanda, for this excellent presentation. We still have, it's 10:45, so I think it's perfect. We have time. There's one question in the chat about, let me read it here. The stakeholders in my country expect to know the return on investment in R&D. I always have a hard time including the cost-benefit dimension, and I find it to be a major difficulty in our study area. Do you have any ideas or tips for this issue? The issue being including return on investment in R&D. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll be happy to take that one. You might have noticed from my qualifications list that when I was 65, I went back to school and got a master's in applied economics because I was asked to do some cost studies. And I felt like I really needed a lot more education to do those. And the person who's asking the question is exactly right. This economic outcomes is going to become more and more important as the years go on. This is a highly specific field with a long history of methods and techniques that are difficult for us to master quickly. Now, after I got a master's degree, I felt like I was capable of being the contracting officer's representative and the project director for a team of PhD level economists. So one thing I recommend is that if you're asked to do this kind of work, you have to have some good economists working with you. You need to develop your own working knowledge of economics, and you can take some classes to do that so you at least know something about what you're talking about. But you have to bring in some high-powered help on this kind of thing. So you can get some economists, they're not cheap, but there are plenty around. There are great economics journals, there are economics associations. Right here most of the meetings are here. We have the Society for Benefit Cost Analysis. I joined that group. I'm active in that group and we're presenting there. you can do a lot with that society. That's another great place to ask for help, to get some economists to work with you. But you essentially, you have to develop some skills in economics itself. You have to get to know the field, and then you have to bring in some big guns to help you. That's what I would say about that. Now, if the person,
I want to add one thing to
okay,
your
let me
comments.
do one more thing. If the person who asked that question will send an email directly to me, I'll send you the syllabus from my class where I talk about including economic outcomes in the evaluation of research, and that'll have a lot of good references for you. So if that person would please just email me directly, or Josh, if you want me to post that, I'll be happy to send my syllabus for that, and then you guys can see what I teach when I'm teaching that and what some of the references are. Sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
So I would like you, the question about return on investment, I think that also involves a conversation with the people who want the results from an evaluation. Who is it that is requesting the evaluation? And that requires a conversation. And all return on investment, I mean, you can always funnel it down to economics, but sometimes the return on investment needs to be a discussion broader than dollars and cents, broader than budgets. That's a very important point, but it may have to do with making decisions during the life of a program, not at the end of a program, or it may be making decisions about a new program based on a current one. So you really need to have that conversation with whoever is asking for the evaluation.
Oh, this is an interesting question. Is there a new occupational series? I don't know. I mean, I'm listed as a health scientist, GS15 health scientist. Many people in evaluation are policy analysts or policy scientists. I don't know if anybody, you guys might know more than I do about that. Is anybody coming up with an evaluation series that you've heard of, Amanda?
Yes,
or anybody?
there is. That's in process for the federal government. And I can't remember what the number is, if it's come out. I think there was somebody on here from OMB may know the answer to that. But that is something that's in process. It's a new U.S. federal government designation.
Wow. I'm glad to see this, Erica's comment that they're doing a series of evaluation trainings. Fantastic. That's what Amanda was saying.
Hi, this is Erica Lillydahl. I'm with the OMB evidence team. I just figured out how to unmute myself.
Okay.
First of all, I wanted to say that the Evidence Act, yes, we're so excited because the Evidence Act finally requires, and sometimes we do need a push from Congress, it requires OMB and OPM to work together to look at an evaluator series, occupational series. And so we've launched that process, but I have to say that your presentation today is just in line. All of your sentiments, so appreciate them. And so yeah, I'm actually going to be passing along some of the information you raised today, because I think the thing is, you can have an advanced degree and be smart, but evaluation certainly is a skill set. And so we want to help highlight what skills you need, including all of the soft skills that you raised today. It's a great presentation. But yes, OPM and OMB are working right now on an occupational series for evaluators, and the outcome will either be updating an old series or putting forth a new one. So we're really excited about that. And I did send in the chat feature. We at OMB, we host, it's only accessible to federal employees, but you can access our evidence and evaluation community of practice. And we're actually about to completely launch a complete refresh and update. It has resources on the Evidence Act, and it has a ton of resources on evaluation. And we've also been hosting with the Government Services Administration, we've been co-hosting some trainings on evaluation, including Basic Evaluation 101 or more advanced topics. So thank you.
That's great, Erica. Thank you. And I see AT says, I'm a scientist by training, but I learn continuously learning from other disciplines, and I'm proud to be an evaluator. It is a great field. I hope for some of you who are just thinking about whether you want to make a transition or you're earlier in your career, evaluation is a great field. There's lots you can do, lots of contributions you can make, and as Erica said, because of the new Evidence-Based Act, we probably have some job security.
One clarification on an earlier question is focused on evaluative thinking and evaluation-specific methodology, making evaluative judgments. I find many research evaluators struggle with this necessary step. So any suggestions about evaluative thinking?
You know, recently there was, what was it called? New Directions for Evaluation. I might even have it here. That had a whole issue on evaluative thinking. And I read through the whole issue. Usually I kind of skim some of those journals, and I read through the whole thing because I thought, well, how much am I doing this personally? And that's a resource I would recommend people to at least go there and take a look at it. One of the slides we showed that talked about evaluative thinking was from Michael Quinn Patton, who wrote a piece of that whole journal of directions. So highly recommend it.
And I think the citation for that is in one of our slides. I think you're right. Now, part of the idea is I can't say that there's a quick way to know how to make an evaluative judgment, because it includes not only data collection, but establishing a standard for comparison, knowing lots of different skills. So working in a team will give you that. Reading some evaluation journals and looking at how evaluation is conducted, developing your professional identity. Thank you, Amanda. We can see that. That's great. Evaluative. Get that right away, everybody. Okay, so that's Bethany. Bethany, we hope to hear from you at a subsequent talk that you've read that and now you'd like to present on it. So there's self-study possibilities there. There's coaching and mentoring possibilities there. There's taking formal classes. All of those things will help you to develop your skills in evaluation thinking. Just becoming more familiar with the field is something you would just start with. We see someone here who's a supervisory education outreach specialist. Great. Learning as you go. Yes, absolutely. An economist. We'd love to have economists. There are lots of economists who do great evaluation all around the world. So that's a wonderful skill set to bring into an evaluation team. People want to know how to do economic research and how to include that in their evaluation. So Natasha, you're going to love evaluation. Okay.
The other thing I want to point out is that Erica posted in the chat box that feds can assess the OMB, OPA, I guess it is, community of practice. And if you don't know what a community of practice is, look it up. You can Google it. But if you haven't been part of one, you know what it is, and you haven't been part of one, consider doing this, because it is a great way to share information, share challenges, and how you've addressed those challenges. So I think there are a lot of different ways to form community. One is by being a member of AEA. If there are any Canadian participants on this call, it could be being a member of the Canadian Evaluation Society, or if you're in Europe, is it EES, European, or I can't remember what the initials are for the European Evaluation Society. So it's a great comment. Thank you for sharing that.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sue, I was just going to say, we're getting close to time. There's maybe one final question, or did you have one final comment?
I'll do one final comment from John Bartleson, and somebody else might have a more up-to-date answer. Daniel Stuffelbeam did have an excellent journal article about evaluation methods. This was some years ago. John, if you send me an email, I'll send you the citation from that. It's not within federal government. Of course, this was pre-GEPRA and GEPRAMA, And I expect some of you have more up-to-date information of an inventory. So if there's anybody on the call who knows about this inventory and can answer John's question, we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, we are at our hour. Thank you so much to Sue and Amanda for a really informative and I should say encouraging and informed presentation about evaluator competencies. Let me see if I can get your final musical outgoing message going. And thanks everyone for joining. And keep an eye out for future presentations from the webinar community for RTD TIG.
And remember, getting what you want and what you need as you listen to the song. Well, I don't hear the song, so just if you want to listen, there's an old video and a new video with the Rolling Stones when they first did this song, and they were all so young and everything, and then they recently did it as a Zoom get-together, and it's quite wonderful. So if you get a chance, go and listen to it because it's fun.
Josh, will you remind people where they can find the slide set?
Yes, we will send out the slides and a link to the recording afterwards. Because we got a lot of questions about getting the slides. So thanks everybody, and thanks again, Sue and Amanda.